alcoholism is like any other disease, any other addiction. Just because someone has cancer, you don't say, "Oh my God, I don't love you anymore." I mean, alcohol is the same thing.
Welcoming to Knockin' Doors Down, Kevin Derrick. How are you today, good sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Living the dream. We're excited to have you on, of course, Kevin, a documentarian. His film that I just love. I mean, you've got an amazing Rotten Tomatoes score. It's more than Miyagi. It's essentially, it's the life story of Pat Morita, just a beloved actor, but really shedding a light on some of the dark times and traumas that Pat went through in his life.
Right. Yeah, we've been lucky with the results that we've been getting with the reviews. I mean, I've never seen 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
It's incredible. You know, yeah, there was a lot of things that I wanted to show with Pat. It was due to, like, you know, the first version that we had, it was like 2 hours and a half, and then we ended up having a screening, and the people gave us notes and told us, you know, you need to take this out, you need to do this and that. So we had to keep the scenes in there that pull the story forward. I mean, there's a lot of things that I wanted to show. For example, you know, Pat's early days and his living conditions with his parents. Mm-hmm. I mean, they lived in a shack with dirt floor, and I think he was mentioning that, you know, they had no refrigeration system, so they would used to hang all of their like rice and bacon and flour and all that stuff. They used to hang it from the ceiling so the rats wouldn't get to it. But, you know, it was pretty bad. I mean, he spent 9 years of his life in a sanitarium from ages 2 to 11. I mean, can you imagine being in a full body cast from your shoulder down to your knee from like ages 2 to 9? And back then they didn't have treatment for tuberculosis. So they figured, you know, we set him out in the sun, hope that he gets vitamin D, and that would basically be his treatment. And they did that for 9 years, and it didn't really cure him. He ended up going to Shriners Hospital. I think he was 11 years old. That's when they did that experimental treatment on his spine. And after a while, he was able to walk. And then when he started walking, that's when the war happened in 1941. Right. So the FBI comes and takes him from the hospital to the internment camp. I mean, it was brutal because even at the internment camp, when he gets there, his parents are there, but he can't communicate with his parents because in the hospital, they've been speaking to him in English. Right. So when he gets there and they speak Japanese, so they can't communicate. Jeez. So, you know, he's gone through a lot of different things. I mean, it's understandable that he started, you know, drinking alcohol. As a matter of fact, his father was making bootleg sake in the internment camps, right, and keeping everyone wasted. So, you know, he started drinking from then. And if you think about it, from like 12 years old all the way to, you know, to his 70s, he was basically drinking every day, but no one really knew about it. Yeah. So all the films that you see, according to what the assistant told me, every film, like you go watch Karate Kid 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, he was drunk. The whole time he was drunk. So, and I guess no wonder he got nominated for that scene that, you know, he played the. But anyways, you know, for the most part, everyone says nice things about Pat. I mean, he volunteered his time to the Children's Hospital, and he did nothing but good things. So I didn't really want to. I mean, I love Pat. I met Pat one time. Oh, really? And he came across such a nice, warm person that I didn't want to destroy or diminish his character. So basically that's, I don't want to talk more than I need to. So if I'm over talking, just, you know, no, okay, shut the hell up. That's it. That's enough.
Yeah. You know, it's really crazy, like how acting is already tough enough, you know, but when you're going in drunk, we had spoken with Charlie Sheen and he said the same thing. He would be watching a movie or show of his, be like, oh, yep, I was hammered there. It's just like, how? Yeah. How? I mean, I guess you're just more confident maybe because you're going in like, yeah, I'm good,
right,
whatever.
Right. I can kind of relate to that because when we started doing this, I've never been in front of the camera. Every time I've been in front of the camera, I can't even say one word. I remember the first time I was in college, I was getting gas and the gas prices had gone down to like $1 and ABC comes in, puts a microphone to my face. Hey, can you talk about why you think the gas prices are so low and all that stuff? And I realized then that, when the attention is on me, I can't say anything. I wasn't able to say like one sentence. So then when this happened with this film and also the prior film, I had to do like publicity. I started drinking. I started taking shots. And when you take shots, it's just for people who have anxiety, it just calms them down. I'm not drunk right now, but if you look at a couple of the previous documentaries, it's just every time I start laughing, that's like a sign, hey, this guy's drunk. But anyway, no, I'm not drunk right now. So, so it just calms you down. And then I was just, it just relaxes you and it makes you able to think better and it my brain processes much better when I'm just slightly buzzed. So I can relate to why he was drinking.
Sure, absolutely. I had a 20-year radio career prior to this, and boy, I know doing live events or hosting and stuff. Oh yeah, I had to be lubricated, so to speak. But you really touch on, Pat, the thing that we've really talked with people about Kevin, that your documentary does such great work, and you comprise it real well, is trauma from childhood. So much with any addiction just stems from our childhood experiences. And I mean, literally, like you said, Pat, in a mental institution, not knowing what to do, then the treatments, then World War II hits. And then, it's a sad part of the history of the United States, took all of our Japanese Americans and put them into the internment camps, essentially concentration camps, not quite like it was in Germany, but you took them away from their jobs, their families, everybody else. Plus, Pat had later trauma, kind of finding out actually his parents weren't his parents.
Right, mother. At the same time, when he came out of the internment camp, I mean, you face racism, no matter what you do. It's not just. I mean, back then it was worse. That's why they had a Chinese restaurant. They were Japanese and they opened up a Chinese restaurant. So, I mean, it started back then, but even it still goes on today. I mean, if you look at all films, all Hollywood films, they they seem to treat minorities in not such a good light. I mean, it started with the American Indians, and then it went to Blacks, and then it went to Russians, then it went to Middle East. And for me, I'm from we came here when I was 9 years old. I'm from Iran, and for me, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, if I'm not talking about media just in general, whether it's Fox or all of them, all of them are biased. So you've gotten to this condition that when you see a guy with a full beard walking outside, you go, "Oh my God, he's a terrorist." Why? Because you've been conditioned to think that the bearded man is a terrorist. Or the same thing when a woman is wearing the hijab, the same thing. It's just all minorities go through cycles. So you just have to wait until your cycle is done and then the next one comes up. So the same thing happened to Pat. I mean, if you look at his IMDb on, all the film that he's done, after the Karate Kid film, you notice it's master this, master that, karate dog, and it just goes on and on. But for actors, I guess they're happy that they're getting, being able to work. But at the same time, I can sense that he wanted to just be an American, not even like a Japanese American, be an American doctor, be an American, because he's not even from there. He was an American. He just happened to look Japanese. So, there's so many different issues. If it was me and I had gone through what Pat gone through, I would have done something worse. I mean, I would have done cocaine, I would have done heroin, I would have done a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, because it really is. It's a multitude of trauma, and you'll find that connectivity in a lot of the stories that we share here. But interestingly enough, and I didn't realize this either, you know, you think, okay, Pat, you know, the World War II ends, families just get back out there. But it was funny that you highlight the part where his family, as Japanese, open a Chinese restaurant because it plays later into his career. But he didn't really even start show business till he was 30.
30, right. That's true. Well, you know, in the Asian culture, Middle Eastern culture, Hispanic culture, family comes first. Whatever they need, we need to be with them, make sure everything is good in order for us to move on. So it's the same thing with Pat. I mean, his dad needed him. He stuck it out, and then he got a job because, you know, with Asians, they want you to be a lawyer, be prominent, and so he ended up getting a job at Aerojet. But it's just, even when he was at Aerojet, he really didn't really want to work there. I heard, and I mean, I read in the manuscript that he wrote, he said they promoted him to a senior level at Aerojet, and then there was like 50 people working under him. So he didn't necessarily need to be at his work all the time. So he would go to the local, you know, pool hall. And then he started learning pool and he started hustling pool, and that's how he was making money. So he really didn't enjoy what he was doing. I mean, it got to a point that he said, okay, it's now or never. So when he was 30, he said he was balding and he was gaining weight. He said, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So, and also for like an Asian kid, it's uncommon for an Asian kid to go to the entertainment field. He was the first Japanese comedian, as far as I know.
Yeah, because this was the 70s at this point.
Early, it was 60s.
Oh, it's late 60s. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think he opened up a lot of doors for, you know, for the comedians and actors who came after him.
Yeah, because there wasn't a multitude of ethnicity and comedy at that time really either. I mean, you had, you know, Red Fox was out there, and then prior, right, you know, a little bit later on, but it's pretty interesting how his career kind of came to a crescendo with, you know, Lenny Bruce. I mean, one of the most controversial comedians, obviously had his substance issues, which the documentary does a great job. Again, for people listening, it's More Than Miyagi. You can get it on demand. I bought it on Amazon. It's a multi-time watch, trust me. But where it kind of came to head because Lenny Bruce's mom ended up being his manager.
Managing, yeah. You know, I didn't really get into that because, first of all the in the manuscript, he really doesn't mention that much about Lenny Bruce, and he only mentions Sally Marr and how Sally Marr helped him with, you know, taking acting lessons and sending him to different auditions and stuff. So I didn't really pursue that side of it because it would have gone to the other direction and it wouldn't have pushed the story forward. Sure. So because of that, I kind of didn't really, you know, mention that much about Lenny Bruce and all that stuff. But in his manuscript, it's so well detailed about his, you know, his whole life that would make a great miniseries on, you know, on Netflix or something like that. And that's something that I might pursue after this.
Hey, I would watch that. I was joking with I think Mikey the other day about, you know, that darn Netflix. As soon as I start to get through stuff, I'm like, I can switch. Then they put something else out. So if you did that,
right, that's true.
You would have my attention. Well, let's kind of fast forward a little bit. I think where probably a lot of people know Pat Morita, at least, you know, I know for me, my dad was a big Happy Days person, and interestingly enough, Garry Marshall, Pat wouldn't be the first subject matter on this podcast that had an impact. We had a former guest, Shanda Renee, who Garry Marshall gave her first shot. Wow. But that was so significant of Garry Marshall bringing Pat Morita in to play Arnold on Happy Days.
Right. It was. They knew each other prior to, I don't know how they originally met, but I think he went on audition for this one pilot show that Garry was doing with Penny Marshall. It was called Wives. I've never saw it, and I looked into it to see what it was about. I really couldn't find any information. So they did the pilot, but it didn't go anywhere. But looking at all like Garry's work, it seems like Pat Morita was like the token minority. I mean, he would try to use Pat on any a sitcom that he was doing. I think there was another one that was called Polanski's Beauties or something, and then Charles in Charge or Joni Loves Chachi, he was in there. But for the majority of what Garry was doing, I mean, he did the Dick Van Dyke Show, he did the Odd Couple, Angie, Mork and Mindy, Love American Style, which that was all basically geared towards, there was no minorities in any of those. And then he did try to do the new Odd Couple, which was two black leads, which was, I think was Diamond Williams and Ron Glass or something like that.
Sure.
So, and that was the only attempt that he did to bring minorities, but I don't think the audience was ready to, you know, accept black leads back then. But at least he tried. And he's a very nice person too. Garry Marshall is a nice person.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been able to meet Garry Marshall.
We were going to interview them. Unfortunately, a lot of people passed away during the time that we were doing. John Avildsen died, you know, a year after we started shooting, the director of The Karate Kid, and Garry Marshall. Penny Marshall was going to do it, and we had time to set it up, but then she passed away. A whole bunch of people. His agent, Arnie, passed away, unfortunately. So all of his detail of his early years we could never get, so I had to rely on, you know, the interviews and the audio clips of stuff that we have.
The Knockin' Doors Down autobiography by Carlos Vieira. It takes you deep into his destructive past and how racing saved his life and opened the door to give back to the community. And 100% of the sales go directly to the Carlos Vieira Foundation, an organization committed to raising awareness for addiction, mental health, and autism. And for inspiration and motivation, tune in weekly to the podcast every Thursday for real-life episodes from celebrities and local heroes. Get Knockin' Doors Down today at kddmediacompany.com or Amazon.
The funny thing though is getting that chance as Arnold. Of course, there was I just love it if you could tell the story of how Pat navigated. Arnold was going to be canceled from the show.
Right.
And I don't fully remember the circumstances, but it's hilarious what he did and how his family history of owning a Chinese restaurant played in.
I think he says it better than I can. I don't think I can say it in such a nice accent that he pulls it up, but that's in the documentary. Back then, there was this one organization that was called Standards and Practices. So whatever you were, like he was Japanese, and he had to only play Japanese leads, Japanese characters. You couldn't play Chinese. So in Arnold, when Arnold started, Garry Marshall, the day of the shoot, Garry Marshall told Pat, you know, pick an accent, pick whatever accent that you want. And the only accent that he was familiar with was the Chinese accent, because they had a Chinese restaurant and his cook had a Chinese accent. So he said, okay, I'll do the Chinese accent. So they started doing like multiple shows. And at the end of the week, the Standards and Practices, the people show up and say, hey, you can no longer be in Happy Days because you're a Japanese guy playing a Chinese dude. So, and then he said his acting survival kicks in and he starts making up his story. And he says, yeah, Arnold, my last name is Takahashi, is Japanese last name. And then he said, my mother was I don't know, my mother was Chinese and he got knocked up by a Japanese colonel in World War II. And then my mother took me and raised me in Milwaukee. That's where he taught me English. And basically that's how Arnold came to be. And then he said at the end of the meeting, they said, oh, okay, I'll buy that. That makes sense.
I'll buy that. But we could work with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing that someone that literally, as the documentary lays out from, you know, that time in that internment camps, you know, 12, 13, 14, you know, consuming alcohol each day, but was to still be so brilliant and creative at the same time. You know, I always wonder, boy, if with the resources that are out there now, if it was, you know, if they've taken back in time, if, you know, we would have gotten different result, but that's kind of a digression. Let's jump into the interesting kind of tie-in with you, because Pat Morita, of course, when he finally lands the role of Mr. Miyagi, one of those just iconic roles. I don't know, I probably watched the first Karate Kid at least once a year, but you kind of have a tie-in because of Pat Morita's stunt double, Fumio Demorua.
Right, right. So, okay, let me go back to, okay, so basically the way it started, we came here from Iran. We came to United States. We came to Anaheim in 1977. And then 2 years later, after we came, the revolution happened in Iran, the hostage stuff. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
So when the hostages started happening, I was like 9, 10 years old here. So a few days later, we started getting all this hate stuff. People went and sprayed on our garage door, go back home. And then I was getting beaten up at school. And even though, we had nothing to do with this, and this was way in the other side of the country. So, and then my dad says, you know what, let's go sign you and your brother up for martial arts. So we go to the local YMCA, it's like walking distance. I go and I take a liking to it. I like martial arts, and my brother is a little more educated, and he's a doctor and stuff like that right now. He said, what the hell is this? I don't want to do martial arts. So anyways, I liked it and I continued it for a long time. So the teacher that was at YMCA, his instructor was Fumio Demorua. So every time we had to test for like yellow belt, purple belt, black belt, we went to Fumio Demorua's dojo, which that was the main dojo. So I became friends with Fumio Demorua. And Fumio Demorua, for those who don't know who he is, he's basically the stunt double of Pat Morita. He did all of the Karate Kid films, O'Hara series and everything. So they were pretty good friends. So that's how I know Fumio Demorua. So basically me getting beat up is kind of like Ralph. But I had my own, Mr. Miyagi, which was Fumio Demorua. So I'm the real life Karate Kid, I guess.
I love it. That's too awesome. And what did was there stuff that Fumio may have talked to you about concerning Pat, especially maybe with the, seeing his addiction that maybe didn't make the cutting room floor? I mean, there was some really great stuff in the film.
With Japanese people, when it's personal, they never share personal stuff from somebody else. Even when we were doing his documentary, I had a hard time trying to get information from the Fumio Demorua's sister, from no one. And then I don't know if you've seen the Real Miyagi, right? Where
Yeah.
the brother starts talking about the rice, how they had to sell the mother's kimoto to raise money to buy rice because they were so poor. So we ended up this time, I said, let's take a new approach. Let's take the brother somewhere else, far away from everybody else, to see if he would open up and tell us stuff. And he did, because everyone was downstairs and no one was hearing what he was saying. So he opened up. So the same thing with Sensei, being Japanese, they don't want to say anything bad about anybody else. So basically the extent of what I got from Sensei is when I talked to him about Pat, he would just go, Pat, too much. That's all he would say. He wouldn't say anything else. So
Oh, shit. Oh, that's too
yes.
much.
So yeah, I couldn't get anything from Sensei. I mean, everyone loves Sensei. Sensei doesn't say anything bad about anyone, and no one says anything bad about Sensei Demorua. So that's as far as I got with Sensei.
Well, and for those that are listening, also check out the Real Miyagi, the other documentary, one of the other ones that Kevin did. It's really great stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about Pat's family. Also, the other thing, it's great that his wife was in there. She seemed incredibly gracious with her time and vulnerability. But he had other marriages too in there, and I'm sure that might have been something that really, as someone that's gone through divorce, and it is closely related to some of my addiction issues, that was probably pretty heartbreaking for him.
It was. Originally when I did the research about the whole family, Ali Morita had written an article talking about his father and his addiction. And I said, oh, wow, if she's open to all that stuff, maybe she could be the driving force in the documentary. And then we hit her up and she declined. She said, you know, I don't want to get involved because blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, I understand. And what I've learned through doing projects is when I approach someone and they're not immediately excited about being part of the project, I never try to convince them, because once I start convincing them, it always backfires and it turns into sabotage. So I just said, okay, great. Thank you so much. So we ended up doing research on Catherine. Catherine was his first wife, but she's not, this was 4 years ago, and she's in a hospital and she can't really remember much. So unfortunately, we weren't able to interview her. And then the second wife, which has 2 daughters, Ali and Tay, and she didn't want to say anything. So I just respect that. If you don't want to be part of it, great. I mean, I would love to know more about Pat from your angle, but if you don't want to do it, that's great. So that's basically it. And the last wife, which is Evelyn, she was open to everything because she owns the state, and she basically had all the photos, videos, and we went to her house and we went to Pat's room and she shared everything with us, everything. So without her, we couldn't have done this. There's no way. We would have just had to resort to like footage and stuff that we find on YouTube and stuff like that. But without her and my producer, Oscar Alvarez, this would have never happened.
Yeah, Evelyn, even though she obviously, you know, many years with Pat and his addiction, of course, there's a really prominent story that's highlighted in the documentary, More Than Miyagi. Folks, you know, you need to see it to really get the full scope about the Happy Days reunion. But she never seemed like angry with Pat, almost as if she understood all the trauma that he went through, and she just genuinely loved him and accepted that.
He did. I mean, she did. I'm sorry. Yeah, they both loved each other. I mean, what she says in the film, she says alcoholism is like any other disease, any other addiction. Just because someone has cancer, you don't say, "Oh my God, I don't love you anymore." I mean, alcoholism is the same thing. So basically, what she started doing towards the end of his life is that he didn't remember when he drank. He did certain things, like he would come home and open up the car door, and he would just fall and sleep in the garage. Or he was doing like weird stuff. So she started taking pictures of all this stuff so she can show him, hey, this is what you're doing. That when you drank, you came home, you did this, you did that. That's the part I didn't want to show in the documentary. I mean, I had a lot of conflicts with what I saw and what I wanted to show, and there was a lot of things that, I mean, you can't blame him. I mean, when you're drunk, you do things. When I'm drunk, I do a lot of things. So I just didn't think that that was fair. And yeah, they did love each other. They did. Through all the videos that I saw, all the pictures, everything that Pat said in the videos, you could truly see that they loved each other.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, Kevin, because excuse me, I mentioned that when we were watching too. When I saw that, I was like, "That why is she taking pictures of him doing that?" It's almost kind of like, I don't know the right word for it, but it didn't seem right that she would. I mean, I know that was her way of trying to show him like, hey, you can't deny it. I took a picture of it. This is it. But it's almost kind of like a form of blackmail almost.
No. She wasn't doing that at all. Because when I talked to other people, that wasn't her intention. When there's a part at the very end where he says she went back to the hotel and she saw him lying on the ground, all, you know, looked like a homeless and all that stuff.
Right.
I had a picture that she had taken of him somewhere else, that he was on the floor and was laying down like a homeless. I put that in there. I put that in our first version. And then someone that was there, he was a critic for one of the Japanese magazines. He said, you know, why did Evelyn take the time to take the picture of him lying there like a homeless person? I don't think that's right. And I told him, no, this is not in the picture of his picture from somewhere else. So because of what he said and another person said the same thing, I decided to take all the pictures out, which I just thought that, you might see it and think something, somebody else might see it and think something else. So I just didn't want people thinking anything at all. So I just took it out.
Yeah.
See,
So-
whereas for me, Kevin, I remember, I was glad you brought that up because I remember Mikey's reaction when she was talking about that. Whereas for me, we were sitting in a work thing and I was talking about a situation where I met a famous basketball player, Brad Doherty. He also owns a NASCAR team, which I'm a fan of the sport. Met him in Anaheim, and I know I met him because I have a photo, but I also see how bloated my face had gotten from how much I was drinking. And so for me, it is a good thing that I still have some of those, and I'll go back and look at them because I remember how it can go so wrong. And so I kind of saw that as a loving thing that Evelyn was doing, like what Pat, this, you're not remembering it, but this is what you're really doing, So I see it in a totally different light than I think other people would.
Right. She tried. And he actually went to get help. The last year of his life, he went to, God, I don't remember where it was. And it was a famous person that has a talk radio show, it's on K-Rock, the guy that talks on
Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew, yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Drew had a place that he went there for 3 months. And he was sober. After he came out, he was still sober for like another 3 months. But what happened was he wasn't getting any work because he was in his 70s now. So he had to find a source of income. So he went and started doing stand-up comedy for a hotel in Las Vegas. But you know how Las Vegas is. I went and saw the stage. I actually went and shot the whole thing, but we never ended up using it. Is that where the stage was 10 feet away is a bar. So, what happens when you start doing stand-up comedy, your audience wants to come and, hey, cheers to this, cheers to that. They buy you a drink. And then he started drinking again, and then it relapsed, and it then became really worse. And then after that, that's what led to his demise.
5150 is power. The power to overcome. The power to persevere. The power to set your life on a course for success. When you're faced with the challenges life throws at you, you focus and do what is needed to go beyond what is required. So stand up, stand firm, believe, make it happen, and live through the madness, knocking doors down along the way. We are 5150.
I think that's one of the great things about this, what you did with the documentary. Like you said, it's not a ride off into the sunset, although there still is that hope there, because Pat, his wife, Evelyn, talks about how Pat wanted her to finish his memoir so that somebody wouldn't go down, if it's helping just one person, not go down the same road as him.
Right. And the unfortunate thing is that he was working on that manuscript. I think I have like maybe 50 some odd pages here. The last 20 pages that he was working on, he was doing it in a hotel room, and there was a guy in there with him, a roommate or something. And then he ended up stealing the last 20 pages. So I have no idea what he was writing. So that's kind of sad. So he basically told Evelyn, hey, this is what I have, try to finish the rest. I mean, the rest of my life, how it happens, finish it up, get it out as a book, a manuscript, do a documentary and all that stuff. And that's how this whole thing came to be about, because when we were shooting the Fumio Demorua project, I wanted to get a point of view from Pat. So Evelyn was the only person. So we went to Vegas and we interviewed Evelyn. And then after the interview, she said, hey, Kevin, I don't know if you know it, but, Pat saw his father get hit by a truck and dragged for miles and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of other things. And that kind of stayed with me. And then when the documentary came out on Netflix, she saw it. She said, oh, my God, this made me so emotional. And then that's when I said, I'm going to hit her up and ask her if she wants to do a documentary on Pat. So I did. I asked her, and she said, Kevin, I'm thinking of doing a biopic, doing a feature narrative on that. I said, well, why don't we do a documentary first? Because it's not going to cost us $10 million to do a documentary.
Right.
Let's do the documentary first, and then see what it generates. And if there's people interested, then we can do the feature film. She said, oh yeah, that makes sense. So let's do that. And then 5 years later, here we are, and it's done and it's out there. So we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah. Well, it's an excellently done documentary film. And not just if you're a fan of Pat's work or The Karate Kid, but just really a human story. And if there's any, lots of our listeners, maybe they've struggled with addiction or someone they know and love, really pick it up, video on demand. Like I said, I bought it on Amazon and watched it a couple of times, and it's just incredibly well done.
Oh, thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about you, Kevin. That's interesting. I had a very special woman in my life that was in a relationship. Her parents were from Tehran, and he come over the same time as you.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So what was your parents just kind of facing that everything that was going on there in the country?
No.
Seeing, or?
There was nothing going on. There was absolutely nothing going on. My uncles came in the 60s, all of my uncles.
Okay.
So everyone already had come here in the 60s. And my brother was around 15, 16. And he said, it's a great idea to bring Courage, which is my brother, here to the US. That way he can get like the best education. So then we, sold everything, and then we came here. The funny thing is, like, when we came for about a year and a half, people would ask us, where are you from? I would say, I'm from Iran. There's two responses. Either they say, wow, I've never heard of that place. Or the other response would be, oh yeah, we just came back, vacationed in Iran for 2 weeks. But now you say, so you're from Iran. Oh my God, it's one of those.
Right.
So basically, and that's, I finished this year. That's what I've been working on. Whoever wants to become a filmmaker, they have a passion project that they want to do. And this is my passion project. I finished doing the first draft while everyone was in COVID and I couldn't do anything. So that's one of the projects that I want to hopefully get made. So once that's done, I think it's going to be really good. I mean, it's an angle that we haven't seen before. It's basically how something that happens in the other side of the world changes this little kid's life that's 10 years old. So anyways, I'm getting to that point where getting a little emotional. So
I completely can understand. I could only imagine, there's certain things for me that, it'll hit those hot buttons.
It's hard. Just imagine you're 9 years old, you come home, and on your garage door, someone has sprayed, go home. You're 9 years old. How do you explain to your kid what that means?
Yeah.
So anyway, It's not just that, it's just a whole bunch of other things that went along with that just kind of stuck with me. So every time I go out, I'm always aware of my surroundings. Am I the only brown person here, or why isn't there this? Why is that guy looking at me? So it just messed up my whole point of view. And even if you look at every film that I do, there's always a segment on racism. I put in a couple of minutes of, because that's who I am,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's important to put out that, and it's funny, not funny, but I can draw similarities, and I know Mikey can too, of when you have traumas, is that you get almost a hypervigilance to certain things,
right.
Be it trust or, like you said, surroundings. I'm still a person that preferably, if I'm in a restaurant, I like to have my back against the wall and be able to see the doors. And, so it's weird, those little things, but I think the work that you're doing, and I've only seen 2 of your films, so I look forward to seeing more, is that you are putting your personal stamp on there. And that was kind of my question. What got you into wanting to be a filmmaker?
Oh, very simple. I can remember that day. It was in the 80s, and that's when the camcorder came out. I don't know if you remember, they used to have like a big ass camera.
Oh yeah, my dad had one of those.
Yeah. It was that, and also there was something you had to carry on your shoulder to put the tape in there.
Uh-huh.
So, and that was like $2,000. It was 1,000 for this, 1,000 for the camera. And I said, where the hell am I going to get $2,000? So I ended up selling everything. I sold my bike. I sold my comic book collection. I borrowed money. So I ended up getting that $2,000. And I bought it, and then I went around the neighborhood. Back then I was in karate, so I went and knocked on people's doors. And when the kids came out, they said, hey, buddy, you want to be in a movie? I said, sure, what do I need to do? I said, well, I have a lot of karate gears at home. You want to just put one of those things on and we'll just do a karate film. And back then, Enter the Dragon was like the biggest thing. So I said, okay, we're going to call it Enter the Black Belt instead of calling Enter the Dragon, Enter the Black Belt. So anyways, I got everyone together, and then we just did a stupid story. Everyone did contests. We were fighting each other for no reason. You know, we're 12 years old, throwing stars, throwing knives, and all that stuff. So we edited it and we showed it the same night to basically whoever wanted to come over. So even though it was stupid, people were laughing, they were having a good time. And back then I was really shy, and it just kind of clicked. It said, wow, I can make people feel a certain way by showing them what I've created. And basically that was the day I decided that, you know, this is for me. So I went to film school and I did a whole bunch of low budget films. I mean, if you look at IMDb, there's a whole bunch of, none of them, I don't recommend you watching any of them. But, you know, they're out there. It's an experience, you know. The first one I did was called The Ultimate Game. I mean, I have TJ Storm in there. He's done Conan the Barbarian and a whole bunch of other people who have been established. You know, it's a story, but you know, it's all experience leading up to what I'm trying to do now, kind of. So
yeah. Well, I love it. Hey, as someone that went to film school as well, major for acting for the camera, minor directing, so I know what you mean.
Oh wow, what film school? Where'd you go to?
CSUMB. It's Cal State University, Monterey Bay. So the initial program,
nice.
Luis Valdez, who did La Bamba, he was kind of one of the initial people that got that program going, which ironically I went to junior high with his son Joaquin, who's in the film, and Joaquin still works in arts and film. And so yeah, I kind of bounced around for a long time, but ever since I was a kid, there's two movies, Star Wars and Jaws, that changed my life, you know, as a 3-4-year-old kid, and so it was always a huge passion. And I just fell into radio, so kind of ended up turning that mistake into a 20-year career.
Well, if it's your passion, don't give up. Just do whatever. Do a short film. You can shoot films with your phone. You can just keep at it. I mean, it took me 40 years, you know, but you know, if it's in you, it's in you. That's all you can do. I mean, I can't do anything else. So, you know, it's just, and I tell people, you know, going to film school is not necessary. I think personally, it's a waste of time. It's better just to go be an intern at someone, some studio, wash dishes, but mailroom, whatever, and just work your way up. And if you end up going to film school, go to USC. Don't go to other places, because all the connections, everyone that has money is at USC. Or Chapman in Orange County, that's very good. And another thing is volunteer in all of those people's films. There's going to be, 100 people? Become their friends, all 100 friends. Work for free for all of them, because the chances of them succeeding, out of the 100, there's only going to be 2 people that are going to succeed. Everybody else is going to be like you and me, where we end up doing something else, and then eventually we come back. So, you know, you gotta be friends with all of those people. So that's my 2 cents. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but, and another thing is, when you go to film school, don't try to go in as a director or go in as a producer. Do something else. Do sound, do makeup, do set design, because a lot of people that I know that have succeeded as a director, producer, they started as set design, because no one wants to do that. So once you establish yourself as set design, you get to make friends and eventually work your way up.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you. And it's true. And it's with anything that you want to pursue, any passion, whatever it is.
You know, it only took me 40 years to find that out. So
Welcome to the, that's the funny thing. You mentioned that, Kevin. I was joking about this with these guys the other day. I got a degree that basically says, would you like fries with that? But then here I am now doing this podcast. I get to do video editing again for the first time in a long time, making the YouTube channel. Any other exciting future projects that you're looking towards that maybe you can share anything about, or are we still focusing?
Well, I'm open to any. Since this thing has come out, every day I get an email about someone who wants to do a documentary about certain thing. What I'm interested in is actors, people who I grew up with in the 80s. That's like for Chuck Norris, singers that I like, Journey, things that I grew up with in the 80s. I would love to do documentary on any of those people. But in terms of films, it's the one that I'm working on, the script that I have. So hopefully when that's done, I'm going to try to get funding and start working on that.
Well, that's great. I think it's your personal story that so many can relate to. That hopefully we get that out there soon, and we can discuss that when that comes to fruition.
Right. Absolutely. That sounds great.
All right. Well, Mike, anything else before we jump to some fun random questions?
No, let's get into it.
All right, you're up first.
All right.
Uh-oh.
These are just fun, Kevin. Just off the top of your head, just have fun with it.
If they were to make a movie about you, who would you cast to play you?
George Clooney.
Love it. Love Clooney.
Go with the good looking.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay. Let me see. What is something about you that people would be surprised to learn that we haven't kind of revealed here already?
I'm generally a shy person. I love martial arts, black belt in martial arts in like 3 different styles. That's about it.
That's about it. Otherwise, keep it simple, huh?
I keep it simple, yeah.
All right. If you could travel anywhere in time, but you had to stay there, where would it be and why?
Oh, in the 80s, because it was so peaceful and there was no internet access, there was no phones. People were actually going out and talking and playing with each other. And
I am right there with you. I would go back in time because we know it was dope. We could breathe without masks and stuff. Some people say they want to go into the future, and I'm like, man, I'm afraid to feel what's going to happen in the future. We know the 80s was cool. I was born in the late 80s, so I don't know. I was little, but I heard it was dope. It was a good time.
It was. I mean, even 70s were good. 70s were good. 60s, I don't remember anything, but I would say early 80s were my favorite.
Yeah. Well, I was a 70s baby, so I had a good time in the 80s. All of my favorite movies came out of that era, pretty much. Music and everything that inspired me.
But just try to imagine if those films that you like came out now, no one would watch them. Like imagine Karate Kid. Karate Kid, if it came out now, people would say, "What the hell is this? This is so slow and boring."
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, well, and that's the wonderful beauty of going back and watching it. I'm like, oh, I love there's a difference between slow and boring and good pacing, and it had good pacing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Read people's minds.
Oh. Have we gotten that before?
I don't think so.
Why? Why do you? It might
sound weird or stupid, but when I'm with someone, I can feel what they're feeling.
Sure.
So but if you can read people's minds that way, when you're in situations, you know what they're thinking. If it's bad thoughts, get away, do something else. Or if they're thinking of something, maybe you can change their mind, or just you can do a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of maybe even with the work you do and why you do documentaries is you got an empath of sorts, Right,
exactly. Like when we have a screening, I always tend to sit in the back. Like, when we have like a test screening, just by the vibe and the way they move their head, their hands, I can tell what they're thinking.
You go up their energy. You could feel their energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's me or everyone, but You know, my kids have the same thing. They can feel when they pass by someone, they can feel what they're feeling. So, you know.
Yeah.
That's a trip. Any pet peeves? Could be minor as hell or big ones, just ones that stand out to you.
When someone says, "Oh, that's cute," it's like, I can't think of any. It's just a stupid story is that I was in college, and it was a speech class, and our instructor comes and says, "Okay, after the break, you guys come back and you talk about your pet peeve." And I was thinking about what pet peeve. So I dropped the class. So I ended up taking another class. So I really don't have an answer to that. There's nothing really, nothing that I can think of.
Okay, Kevin, that shit is funny.
You can have some of mine because I got a million.
I didn't have. Now I've dropped a lot of classes in my day, but I never had it as simple as, fuck, I can't think of a pet peeve. Forget it, I'm dropping the class. Oh, all right, Mikey, wrap it up with one more here.
It's your turn.
It's my turn?
You handle it. Wrap it up.
All right. Do you have a favorite curse word?
No, not the favorite. Well, in Farsi, our curse words are very descriptive. It's like when I get upset, I don't know who are you gonna show this video to, because I mean I can say some stuff that is really bad. Okay, so maybe you can cut it out. There is a saying that we say like "Kila khati kunet," which means, my wife always said, what does that mean? It basically means a donkey's, up your whatever. And,
I've heard it before.
All of our bad words are very descriptive. It's either your mother is a this or your sister has this, and it's not like a regular FU and stuff like that. So,
no, when I'm cussing at people, I say that. No, just kidding.
I've actually heard that saying before. Now that you mentioned it, I had someone translate.
When I was driving one time and I said to someone who was pulled in front of me, I said, and then my son was like 5 years old, and then he started learning this thing, and he went to one of his friends' house that the mother speaks Farsi, and then he said, "Hey, do you know what means?" And she says, "What the? Where the
hell?" Kevin, we always like to leave the guests with the kind of last words of encouragement, and I think that kind of what Pat's wife said about the best things in life begin from the worst things in life, but not without hope and effort.
Dreams, yeah.
Is there anything more that you can kind of offer, maybe off your own personal journey and your journey through making this film?
Sure. There's different things I can say. I mean, always make a film for yourself. Don't make it for the audience, because you're never going to please the audience. They're always going to give you thumbs down, no matter what the hell you do. So make something that you enjoy watching yourself. Like for me, late at night when I'm on Amazon, I click and I see my own title and I said, I like that, let me watch it. So believe it or not, I end up watching it, and I watch the whole thing, even though I've seen it 5,000 times. But why? Because I enjoy watching it. And I'm hoping, but what I enjoy, there's like millions of other people who kind of enjoy what I like to watch. And then another thing, I have a lot of friends who have big egos. I mean, big egos. So one of my favorite saying is, the only thing that stands between you and success is your ego. So just make sure you bring that ego a couple of notches down. That's about it.